Okay, I had talked about making, taking some time to make an additional element that I want to use in the A-frame piece that I'm working on. These are some pattern pieces that I've made. And you can see the word lock. I should actually be using the word padlock. I've made, this is after doing some research and working on some, I should say research, doing some mock-ups and messing around with the materials that I have on hand. So this is one of those things where I'm using a lot of scrap material to make what I need. You can see I'm using some baking boxes. These are scraps of foam paper covered foam board from the dollar store, little scraps that I kept because I don't throw anything away. And I'm going to show you some of the examples that I made. Let's see, let's put these in order. Okay, da-da-da-da-da-da. Okay, this is the first one that I made. It's a little, it's really solid, and I kind of liked the shape, but the proportions are off. The proportions for the hasp is, I think it's called the hasp, and the body are wrong, like really wrong. They're about 2 to 4 millimeters too big going around, and it just, I made this one out of little bits of scrap gray board. It's got a nice heft to it, but it just didn't do what I wanted it to do. So I then did a quick mock-up in carton or corrugated cardboard. I don't know, I think I did glue this one together. Yeah, I did. Because I was thinking about, well, I could bend these things. And this is getting a little closer to the dimensions I want, but it wasn't looking the way I wanted it to. So, you know, this was much easier to put together. I didn't do as much finishing. You can see on this one I did much more finishing of, but kind of goofed up some of the work here. One of the reasons I didn't like this one is because I didn't like on this mock-up these little corners here. That's why I did something. I was seeing if I could fold the corrugated cardboard. Well, then I came up with this one. It should be noted that this element with the eye in it is what has been intended since I started working on this. And I got closer to the dimensions I wanted. And in this one, I more or less kind of nailed the sequence of construction, and along with getting some other elements in. I didn't glue this one completely together because this may still be a little bit stuck. I didn't glue this back piece on, and you can see, to give this a tug, that this is opened, and I've just got this element taped in here, and I have some supporting underneath this, the hasp. Now, it should be noted that for these pieces, this here, I was using pieces of gray board. I'm gonna pull out the gray board. But like 2 pieces, I think there was like 4 pieces that I laminated together. And I thought, well, that's what I want. The problem is with this ends up being a little top heavy. And once I was done with the design, I liked being able to cut out little elements and put them down. I liked how the eye looked. But what I didn't like were these corners. I don't like the harshness of this. So I went back to the drawing board and I mocked this up, which actually kind of looks like a miniature cat box with a little hole in it. But I came up with this right here. Now, before I go any further, I need to tell you that my father, why of course am I using, these are basically padlocks, not just locks, these are padlocks. They are a different kind of breed. My father's lifelong passion from the time he was really little was padlocks. And you can kind of see how I'm sorting through some stuff here. So I put this together like super quick. I don't even think I glued all this in. I think I glued this bottom piece and then just popped this in the top, did a little tape on it because I wanted to think about it. And I used a corrugated cardboard you can see it's just that tiny, tiny corrugation. But I ended up not liking how this looked. You can kind of still see the bends in it. I didn't like that at all. So I started out, I went back in and I sucked out about 2.5 millimeters. Sucked out about 2.5 millimeters from the outside edge. Then I went through my stash and found that I had enough board, gray board, like packaging, to use this kind of board where you can see there's a little bit of a bend in it, but because I strengthened it up by putting 2 pieces here, because this is only about 3 pieces of this together are about 2 millimeters, so it's about a millimeter or a little under a millimeter, I think. Yeah, a little under a millimeter. So you can see here, this is what I'm kind of intending here. I cut these pieces. This ended up being, I think, about roughly 14 centimeters going around. I cut the veneering piece on the bottom large so that I could glue this in place. So then, where did it go? I just had it. So then the eyeball, the eye, can be easily glued in from behind. I need to get rid of that little snaggy piece of paper there. But you can see how it can be attached. Now, I have some other pieces here where you can see I've put the glue in, and I'm sure you're sitting there screaming, why are you not using a glue gun? I don't like glue guns. So that's the reason why. These will dry a little bit more. I'm going to do a trick that I've done before. Not a trick, a technique that I've done before when I've wanted to hold something in place, but I've also wanted to cover up the glue. I'm going to use some felt scraps around this to help hold it into place. And it will also be bendy enough to curve. Because what's going to happen, as you can see here, this is going to be glued around. Actually, I don't have this quite tight. It's got to be pulled really tight. There we go. And you can see what it begins to look like. So that's why the eye goes in first, and then it gets glued onto the bottom, and then I will glue everything in place. Now, this seam back here, I'm going to cover up with something else. So that seam should not be there. Now you're probably wondering, well, what's going on the top? Well, funny you should ask. When I grew up around, and when I say my father collected, I mean he had hundreds and hundreds of locks and padlocks. He could rebuild anything. He'd take them apart, he'd rebuild them himself, the tumblers on the inside, he'd rekey them. They were his life. They were his lifelong love. So when I looked up a specific type of lock that was, you know how you hear sometimes people call it their grail item? I was looking up my father's grail lock. Was doing some history reading about it, which I'll talk about at another time, but it was absolutely fascinating. So I kind of went down that rabbit hole. So what I did, and you can see all of these are marked with letters. I have 5 of them because there's some other things I might want to use them in as well. You can see from these, this is 2 pieces of that lightweight foam board glued together, and you can see I came in this morning, it was all about sanding, and I sanded everything, so I just knocked off enough so I could get the look that I wanted. Now you can see here it's through another piece of styrofoam, or the board. I've coated it. I've also given it a coat of Mod Podge because I want to seal the foam portions so it will accept paint. And on these top pieces with the foam, you can see I've already glued on the veneering piece for that. So when the piece goes together, as I knock something over here, this will be I can kind of curve this around, it will look more like this. And I kind of like how it looks like a little mouth right down there. There's some stuff I'm trying to sort out. It kind of meaning wise behind some of this stuff. But it's pretty accurate, and I kind of feel dumb for not seeing it earlier. I do also have another piece of foam that I think I may be adding in this piece, or right in here, once it's glued together, because once this is glued together, then this piece can be put on top. Now, one of the reasons why I use the foam in this is because it's a little bit more malleable, in that I can kind of squish it to where I want it to go. And I really need to straighten this one out. And I'll add glue here before all of this goes together as well. So what I'm going to show you right now is gluing in the eyeball. And it's not that difficult, because honestly with these other ones I didn't do it this way, but I had already glued this portion into the bottom, and I was like, oh, I don't want to take it apart. That's just kind of dumb. I'm not going to do that. I can still do this quite easily. And you can see I just put on a little bit of the glue, and I'm using just a sharpened bamboo, scrap of bamboo here, and I'm just getting it around. The reason I'm doing it here instead of on the actual piece is because the actual piece is just too small. Now, flip it over, make sure I got the eye going the right way. Yeah, I got to get back in there and get that little, I think that's out of there. Flip it around the right way. And then, now I kind of hemmed and hawed about painting the inner rim. You can see I veneered that inner rim. It's about 2 millimeters. That's how I know 3 pieces of this are about 2 millimeters. I hemmed and hawed about painting this first, but I didn't want anything to crack. But you can see here I've got the black rim around the eye here. This inner piece is going to be black then. This just little inner piece. So if there is any accidental smudging, it's not going to show up. So once this is here, I'm going to let this get tacky for a minute. Then I come back in and very carefully lay a bit of glue around here. And I know this seems excessive. This is just how I work. And then very carefully with the glue around, trying to get it kind of even, because it's gonna, there we go. And then I can set this aside to dry. And again, children, don't do what I do. And because this is up a little bit, I'm going to set it so it's up a little bit. Now I also, in related news, added on the little, the toothpick pieces for mounting of the 2 ladders to the side of the A-frame. I'm going to let these dry again. I think I've got 2 coats on this. I'm going to let this dry completely and then hit it with a little bit more, what you call it? Hey, I did that with the wrong color. Oh yeah, I did mix a special brown for this. You can kind of see this. You can see that these are a slightly different color, and that's a slightly different color. Well, color my face red. I'll go back in and I'll get the brown paint that I mixed, and I'll hit those with the color again. And then I'm just going to let these rest for a while. I did try on one, try to use some spackle, and I really just did not like that, how this looked. It just did not look good. So I'm not going to do the spackle. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to let it be, and I'm going to be using, I may mix up some of my own gesso to go on this. And gesso is pretty easy. I'm going to mix it up using, I don't have any plaster right now, but I do have some white chalk. So I'm just going to grind that up really, really fine. And I've got white glue, white paint, and some water. And that should help. And I will do that after these pieces are glued together. And the glue has cured, because if something is still, the glue hasn't cured, and then you try to paint over top of it, you get kind of crazing, the crackling. It looks really gross. Okay, this video is already far too long, and seeing as it's been taking me on average about a day to upload a video, I think this 15-minute one is going to take quite a while. So anyway, that's what I'm working on right now, and hopefully I can share with you soon what I want to do with these. Well, at least with one of them. The other ones I have some plans for, other things, but these in particular, this one in particular that I'll use for the A-frame piece. So I will see you in the next video. Thank you, patrons. Bye.